Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted shortly to open the second and concluding plenary session of today's first IISS Riyadh Defense Forum. As you settle in your seats, might I remind you all that if any of you wish to make a crisp comment or ask a perceptive question following the presentations from this plenary, that you need to put your badge inside the side of the microphone, press the mic button as if you were to speak. The microphone will indeed turn green, but that only means that I have you on my list here and I can then call on you at the right time. If you anticipate the need to ask a question, it's better strategically to be prepared and to engage in that operation during the course of the plenary of placing your badge on the side of the microphone, pressing the button, and waiting till I call you. The second plenary session is entitled International Defense Perspectives, and we're delighted that the defense perspectives presented here will be entirely international. We are honored to have here our host, Ahmed Al-Ohali, the head of the General Authority for Military Industry here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Minister Kang Yoon-ho, Minister of Defense Acquisition in the Defense Ministry of the Republic of Korea, Lord Grimston, Minister of State for Investment in the United Kingdom, and Jed Royal, the Deputy Director of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency in the United States. I'll ask each of them to speak in the order in which I've just succinctly introduced them. They will speak for 6 to 8 minutes from the podium, and then we will enter the Q&A period. So with that, might I invite His Excellency Ahmed Al-Ohali of the General Authority for Military Industries here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thank you, sir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير تركي الفيصل حفظه الله، شرفتنا وكرمتنا بحضورك صاحب السمو، أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, fellow panelists, let me begin first by thanking IISS for organizing such an outstanding event today. It's the first time in Saudi Arabia, and it's an honor for me to stand here today and address the elite of the global defense industry. As you know, the world we live in today is very different from the world we lived in 3 years ago. The past few years have shown us that all around the world, cooperation is vital and needed more than ever in the face of adversity. Defense is not just simply about protecting a nation's borders, but about protecting its integrity and its infrastructure so that people can access the goods and services that keep them safe. It's about protecting digital mechanisms so that we can function and communicate. Defense is also about developing the human capital and providing people with the knowledge to innovate and lead. More importantly, collective security is about ensuring a safe, secure, and prosperous future for our children. Countries around the world are developing industrial policies to create strong and resilient national supply chains, and the Middle East is no different. In Saudi Arabia, for example, we are aiming to localize more than 50% of our military spending by 2030. His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman made it very clear that there is no armament deal without local content. With a GDP of around 850 billion US dollar, the kingdom's economy is one of the 20 biggest in the world, opening itself to global investor and strategic partnerships. Going beyond the size of the market, nearly 50% of the kingdom's population is under 30 years of age. That means dynamism, potential, and innovation. With a clear strategy provided by Vision 2030, sitting at the heart of the Arab and Muslim worlds, and as a hub connecting 3 continents, Saudi Arabia is an investment powerhouse representing stability and prosperity. Similar initiatives are taking place in several regional countries. Our collaboration and cooperation is an ingredient for joint success. We are here in Saudi Arabia working very closely with all our partners in Saudi Arabia, with the governments, entities, as well as with the private sectors and globally, in developing and implementing programs for the defense industry sector to be self-sufficient and to strengthen our local supply chains and promote transparent and secured investments. And equally important, to support development of innovators and leaders of tomorrow's defense industry. Our strategy and goals are very clear. There has been never better time to invest in defense sector in Saudi Arabia than now. As part of our supply chain initiatives, we have already identified more than 70 investment opportunities worth tens of billions of dollars. In another groundbreaking reform, foreign companies can now own 100% of their investments in Saudi Arabia defense sector with similar incentives offered to local investors. Over the next decade, we are expecting an aggregate investment in the industry sector here north of $10 billion. Our industrial participation program, which was mentioned in the first panel, which is really a modernized and different offset program, makes sure that the strategic partnerships between domestic and international players contribute to our localization vision and strengthen the Made in Saudi brand. We have also created a dedicated military industry human capital strategy to leverage the potential of our young and dynamic population. This includes launching over 60 initiatives in collaboration with over 100 stakeholders, including universities, research institutes, and private sector partners. We are empowering our nation by offering equal opportunities to everyone. Workforce participation among women in Saudi Arabia has been steadily increasing over the past few years. It has reached 32% by the end of 2021. That is double what it was 5 years ago. Our Women in Defense show, or our Women in Defense initiative during the WDS show, ensures women are not only represented equally in the industry, but also have access to training and development opportunities. Starting from the university, we are pursuing programs that will increase the attractiveness of the defense sector for female students and will offer them desirable career opportunities in the industry. The Kingdom focus on research and technology will help enabling successful and sustainable industrial base. There is a strong correlation, as you know, globally between defense R&D spending and successful and sustainable industrial localization. Currently, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expenditure on R&D as a percentage of its total defense procurement budget is less than 1%. And we hear that from Fenella today on the comparison to other industrialized regions. When compared to the global average, which is the percent of about 4.3%, and also or compared to the most advanced in research and development like US and China, which is about 8.3%, our aspirations in R&D in Saudi Arabia is to increase our investment fourfold by the year 2030. Our strategy has identified several categories of priority technologies, and with the newly established General Authority for Defense Development, both GAMI and the newly established authority, we will work together to ensure the success of creating a sound innovation research ecosystem and deliver for the main localization target. All of these programs, reforms, and initiatives are catalysts for the transformation our country is witnessing. This is an unprecedented period for strategic partnerships, investments, and a chance to be part of history in the making. I look forward to having this discussion with such distinguished guests about how defense enables a safe and prosperous world for all. And I look forward to have a successful second panel. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. Minister Kang of the Republic of Korea.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the first plenary session is very, very wonderful and fruitful. But generally speaking, I think basically second plenary session is a little boring, especially considering my voice and my message are too much boring. So, before starting my speech, I should make you wake up. So, recently I read a very interesting report about healthcare. 20-second hand clapping is very, very good to your health. How about following me with hand clapping? Not foot clapping, with hand clapping, like this. Let's start with just only 20-second hand clapping. Let's start. Thank you very much for your big applause for my speech. Distinguished guests, I'm Kang Hoon-ho, the Minister of DAPA of Korea. DAPA is the specialized governmental ministry for defense acquisition in Korea. It was launched in 2006, and I'm one of the initial members of DAPA. Since my inauguration as the Minister of DAPA in December 2020, my priority has been the development of defense acquisition program and the defense industry of Korea. Before beginning my speech, I would like to give my word of congratulations for the success of WDS. And I would like to confer my heartfelt appreciation to His Royal Highness Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud and His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud for inviting me to this meaningful event. Also, my special thanks must go out to the Governor of GAMI, His Excellency Ahmed Abdul Aziz Mohammed Al Ohali, for your endeavors in hosting this event. And I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Dr. John Chinman of IISS for organizing this event and giving me such an honored opportunity to deliver my speech. The Korean War in 1950 brought the entire land into the ashes of war. That time, Korea could not afford to produce even a small gun or bomb without any available infrastructure nor technology. However, the majority of weapon systems for the Army, Navy, and Air Force is now homegrown, which is a tremendous source of pride as the Minister of DAPA. My speech contains 3 parts today. First is the lessons we learned from the growth of Korean defense industry. Second is the direction of Korean defense industry in the coming years. And the last is our approach in international defense industry cooperation. There are many factors behind this remarkable growth of our defense industry and technology, but I'd like to highlight the two parts. First is the establishment of Defense R&D Center, ADD, the Agency for Defense Development. And the second is the founding of Defense Acquisition Program Administration, DARPA, which is the specialized government ministry for defense acquisition. ADD was established in 1970 with the mission of independent development of weapon system in Korea. There had been some skepticisms behind on the feasibility of independent development, and some criticized that it is more cost-effective to acquire systems from abroad. Notwithstanding, the technology prowess has been accumulated with the development of basic weapons such as small arms as starting point. And ADD has been always at the center of a majority of Korean weapon systems. Today, the development of weapon system is conducted by defense company in Korea, and ADD is now focusing on the development of advanced future technology. I strongly believe that ADD will continue to be at the center of the development of defense technology in Korea. Another driving force behind our growth is the establishment of DARPA, which was founded in 2006 as the specialized government ministry for defense acquisition program. In the wake of its exemption, the formulation of defense acquisition and defense R&D policy, allocation of defense acquisition program, promotion of defense industry, as well as comprehensive management of defense projects were made possible, creating synergy effect. During early days of DARPA, there has been some concerns and criticisms over the concentration of excessive power and poor communication with military forces. Before its establishment, defense acquisition work was dispersed to 8 institutions, such as the Ministry of National Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Army, Navy, Air Force. However, as DARPA integrates once dispersed work, efficiency, transparency, and specialty has remarkably improved. Since its beginning in 2006 to 2020, defense R&D budget has surged from $1.1 billion to $2.6 billion, and sales in defense industry has grown from $4.6 billion to $12.1 billion, recording triple growth. DARPA is committed to expediting changes for the whole new defense industry. We are determined to become first mover with developing our new weapon systems using our own technology rather than being the fast follower. For this, the new department will be newly set up in DARPA to focus on the development of advanced technology, and by doing so, 20% of DARPA's capacity will be dedicated for the development of new technology in preparation for the future, taking on bold challenges. Furthermore, DARPA will expedite the promotion of defense companies to dive into new areas such as space, AI, drone, semiconductor, and robot. Korea has improved the level of defense technology and the defense industry capability through the government-led defense R&D and localization. However, defense weapon systems are becoming more complicated, and the time and cost of development are increasing as well. This makes it more difficult for one country to cover all areas on its own. As a result, Korea seeks to go beyond the strategy of independent development and domestic production to create international defense cooperation, where both parties can achieve the win-win relations via co-development and local production. You would like to identify common requirements in weapon systems and conduct co-R&D with defense partner country. We will support local production through nurturing local contractors and the technology transfer in production. In addition, by sharing equipment and parts with a partner country, we will facilitate mutual logistics supporting systems and post-production development. And performance improvement will be also conducted as well. In particular, we pin high hope that Saudi Arabia and many countries in the Middle East can be the major defense cooperation partners. And we wish to build defense cooperation partnership, which can reduce the cost of development, production, operation, and maintenance through building the defense cooperation system. Last but not least, this kind of international cooperation process will strictly abide by international export control system. Korea is one of the 4 Asian countries which joined the 4 major international export control systems. Once again, I would like to highlight that Korea will provide our utmost effort to keep international peace, and will pursue international cooperation abiding these kind of international rules. Let me draw the conclusion of my presentation. As I already mentioned, Korea has built strong military power and nurtured the defense industry to protect our own country in the face of a real threat from North Korea. However, Korea is not the country that seeks regional dominance, and we are the peace-loving country with no major enemy except North Korea. Therefore, we always wish to have more friends, and I hope to make strategic cooperative relations that mutually create win-win partnership. There is a saying, if we want to go fast, go alone. But if we want to go far, go together. I wish to have more partners which can enable us to go farther away in the defense industry cooperation. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Shukran.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Kang, for underlining your interest in emerging defense technology, especially in the AI and space domains that, of course, are of great interest also in this region. With all the concentration going on about the European security situation, perhaps it's just worth noting that yesterday the DPRK launched its 9th ballistic missile test of the year. So we need to be alert to those realities too. With that, could I invite Lord Grimston to give the perspective from the United Kingdom? Thank you.
Well, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, fellow ministers, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you very much, John, and for all those at IISS for inviting me to speak today, and in particular for sharing your extraordinarily valuable insights into the region's economic and defence priorities. They have given us all much to think about. And it's fantastic to be back in the Kingdom, my 5th visit in just over 12 months, and to be representing the UK at the World Defence Show. Saudi Arabia, and indeed the whole region, is especially important to myself and to my country because of our historic and everlasting ties. And the UK is excited and optimistic about our evolving relationship with the region. And building this ever closer partnership is one of our absolute priorities. Our Prime Minister has made it very clear to all his ministers that this is one of our top priorities. And of course, it goes without saying that defence is a key tenet of our relationships. And in the years ahead, identifying new opportunities to partner in this sector will continue to be vital. As the IISS findings clearly show, the region's ambitions for the future match our own. And the UK is already responding to this signal as we seek out opportunities for collaboration. And for the industrial aspect of our defence relationship, these will include not just sharing intellectual property, but jointly creating it. And this will come from co-investing in research and development and through stimulating two-way investment. And my fervent belief that investment can no longer be a one-way street, a one-way traffic. It is the mutuality of investment where both parties benefit and deepen and enrich their collaboration through it is the future of investment. Now, the Industrial Cooperation Committee that I have the pleasure of jointly chairing with His Excellency the Governor of GAMI is an excellent example of the defence partnerships we are building. And our work is already bearing fruit. And this week we expect good news on several joint ventures and partnership agreements. But as the IISS findings show, due to the live physical threat, the very real physical threat that state and non-state actors pose across this region when compared to the UK and other economies, completely understandable and appropriate that countries here allocate a significantly higher proportion of their budgets to defence. And I can't see this ceasing in the near future. And there is a shared desire to direct spending towards investment as well as research and development. And that, of course, is going to be crucial to developing the region's domestic industrial bases. This is so important, and bolstering security. And I very much support this. And the UK stands ready to work with the Kingdom, and indeed the whole of the region, to identify and seize opportunities for investment to support these aims. And picking up the words of my co-chairman earlier, particularly in human capital and through training and education. Because these investments can form the basis of a resilient and enduring sovereign capability and will be especially important as our economies continue to recover from the pandemic and face the growing geopolitical challenges that we are all facing. But I stand here speaking to you all while our friends and our partners face regional challenges that absolutely certainly have global ramifications. And this strengthens the case for closer cooperation in defence and security and across our relationships. And of course, there will be times when challenges with the relationships will evolve, but I'm confident that this transition will pay dividends for us all. and that structures like the Industrial Cooperation Committee, to my mind, a model for cooperation, will mobilize industry to lower barriers to cooperation, building a solid foundation upon which we can integrate our partnerships, develop our capabilities jointly, and of course, export together. And in these uncertain and trying times for the international community, as Russia wages a reckless and illegal war in Ukraine, partnerships in defense between the UK and our allies and partners around the world become ever more important, because they will protect our people at home and abroad, our economic security, our infrastructure, and critically, our ways of life, allowing us to protect our shared vision for a global order and counter threats to our shared interests. And of course, through that, promoting mutual prosperity, industry, and innovation. But it is not only our partnerships in defense that will enable us to hold firm. Our economic partnerships are also key to the stability of our regions. We trade and invest together in so many areas, and this makes, of course, our supply chains strong and resilient to economic shocks like the one sparked by President Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And as Europe rightly reduces its dependence on Russian gas, on Russian hydrocarbons, with Nord Stream 2 now cancelled, reliable partners are needed more than ever. So in closing, I want to make one thing crystal clear. The UK is committed to working with our friends across the Middle East and North Africa to bolster our mutual defense capabilities, to strengthen all our economies, and most importantly, to prepare for the future. Thank you all very much.
Lord Grimston, thank you so much for that very strong statement underlying the shared desire to direct spending towards investment in R&D, and that investment must, of course, crucially include human capital. Jed Worrell, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And two quick comments off the top. First, thank you to IISS for convening these kinds of forum, which are so important to the contemporary discussion and discourse on such important issues. And those presentations we received earlier during the first plenary were absolutely exceptional. So thank you very much for the investment IISS is making here in this region, in London, in Washington, and around the world. Secondly, Governor, I'm going to go ahead and congratulate you on what will be a tremendous WDS. That might be bad luck. I don't believe in luck. And so I predict a tremendous success for you in this inaugural event. And thank you to you and to all of our hosts here in the kingdom for bringing us together. I want to touch today on several trends in impacting defense industry going forward and bring some connection to my work, which is in the world of security cooperation, how we connect with our allies and partners around the world to create capability and capacity for our mutual security interests. And I've got 7, so that's a bit long. I'll hustle through them as fast as I can. The first trend I want to note is a sobering one. As we sit here in this room, there are Russian cruise missiles and artillery shells landing across the nation of Ukraine, and that is a moment worth reflecting on. This will undoubtedly change the nature of the defense industry over the coming 5 to 10 years. For those of us who thought that we had gotten past naked military aggression in our history, we are brought back to reality very quickly in the last week or so. My agency is central right now to the response to this crisis in Ukraine, participating directly in providing lethal and non-lethal equipment to our Ukrainian friends. Internally in my agency, we've now stood up what we call the European Crisis Management Team. And this team is focused simply on trying to process and prioritize the variety of requests that are coming in from our NATO and European partners, just as they flood us with requests for prioritization, for new equipment, and for processing of existing requests for sales. So this will undoubtedly change the nature of our cooperation, both with industry and with our partners going forward. Secondly, emerging and disruptive technology. We've touched on this a little bit already today, and my thanks to Minister Kang for his emphasis on this topic. My view is that these technologies are actually outpacing our government's and global government's approach to be able to harness them. In the Department of Defense, we've stood up a joint artificial intelligence center that's focused on trying to understand how to apply artificial intelligence into our industrial requirements. We have the Defense Innovation Unit that is co-located with Silicon Valley and with tech companies to make discerning decisions on how to apply new emerging technologies for our department. Of course, we have DARPA, well known. My last 4 years I spent at NATO. One of the projects I was able to work on was development of a brand new framework for emerging disruptive technologies for the Alliance, and how to look and scan the horizon across all 30 allies to determine where that technology was emanating and how we could make best use of it, and develop frameworks, policy, procedural frameworks around it so that it did not pass us by too quickly. But nonetheless, we're still struggling to keep up with the pace of this technological development. I think this is going to drive a new conversation on government sovereignty in some respects, when you have technology firms that are able to keep pace and keep footing with what were otherwise previously the domains of governments only. I think it will also necessarily, if we're smart, will drive a new public and private conversation on how we participate with one another. That will require a great deal of trust. It will require familiarity and understanding of the rules of the road, of how these technologies might impact our security situation and our industries. And I caution in this case that there may be some tension here that we need to watch out for between corporate profit motives versus the government national security motive of security and stability. But nonetheless, I predict that if we are opening this conversation effectively and really engaging with good faith, then we will find a way forward, but we need to move very quickly. Third, I believe we need to start to reconsider the profitability model for defense exports. For industry, what does this mean? In the first case, probably means a broader investment in exportability early on in the research and development phase. Right now, we often, in the United States, have our primary industry partners looking at the United States services, the military, as their primary customer, and so investing a lot of time in trying to make sure they're meeting the US service requirements, and then only after the fact, sometime later, considering the application of exportable variants of those systems. I think that we need to be thinking about this much earlier in the R&D phase and not waiting until we're into the test and evaluation phase. I'll give you one interesting example. I was speaking with a colleague over breakfast about how challenging the policy decision was in the early 2000s to sell F-16s to Chile, whereas fast forward 20 years, we now have a plant in Greenville, South Carolina, my home state, building F-16s exclusively for export. We do not, in the United States, acquire F-16s anymore, but we do build them and sell them exclusively for export. And we need to be thinking that far ahead when we think about technology or research and development right now, and making sure that we're not waiting too long before we think about partnership with our allies and partners and the exportability of those systems. There will be a new emphasis in the National Defense Strategy when it is promulgated here in the coming months on the importance of relying on allies and partners and new levels of reliability. And if that's the case, if we, the United States, make a determination that our national security will be increasingly reliant on the capability and capacity of our allies and partners, we need to invest in that early, and industry is a critical participant in that process. For government, this means greater anticipatory policies, making sure that we're conveying to industry early the importance of which policies are important to us, and making smart bets with limited government resources in areas that we know will be increasingly important for collective security interests. It's difficult right now. There is so much information on new technologies out there. It can be very difficult to scan and understand all of the different applications, but we need to do a good job of making sure that we're investing in those relationships, both with traditional and with non-traditional defense industry partners. Fourth, I think we also might need to reconsider the engagement and the access model for allies and partners to U.S. defense industry. For government, I think this means that we need to stop being quite as passive as we have been in the past. In this case, what I mean is that we've often waited for a demand signal from an ally or partner before we begin a conversation on capability requirements. In the future, I think we need to be driving an alignment conversation early. So it's demand-driven, but it's also interest-driven, where we are able to collect up our mutual thoughts and make sure that we're investing together in the right capabilities and with the right capacity. Again, I think that the relationship, the emphasis on allies and partners in the new National Defense Strategy will very much illuminate some of that for us. I mentioned I was at NATO the last 4 years. At NATO, we have the NATO defense planning process. It's not perfect, and I wouldn't recommend that NATO become a model for others. Each region is unique and specific in its own regard. But having said that, this model now has 30 nations working together to agree on the collective security requirements of the entire alliance by serial line, every single capability with volumes attached to it. And there's something to say for us being able to make sure we have that conversation early on with our allies and partners. The other element of this is making sure that allies have the right kind of access to U.S. defense industry. And I'm afraid that we've been a little bit too restrictive in thinking about the financing model for for allies and partners as they look to acquire U.S. product. We need to be a little bit more competitive in that with things like distributed payment schedules and possibly low-risk loans in the future. Fenella, I think, made an interesting point on where the U.S. is not able or unwilling to offer a certain product, then we see China in some cases stepping into that. I actually don't see this to be a very concerning situation with respect to the capability itself. I think, though, the more concerning question is whether or not the U.S. financing approach, our model, can compete with the Chinese financing model. And that is the significant difference between those two models right now. Fifth, we see increasing demand from our allies and partners on non-standard equipment. I think the United States needs to increasingly prioritize what we call non-program of record, that is non-standard equipment requirements from our allies and partners. This is going to be increasingly significant as every relationship is unique and requires tailoring in its own regard. Right now, if the United States is buying something for our own inventory, there's a natural momentum there that rises it to the top of the inbox. I think in the future, we'll need to make sure that we are equally pressing forward on those non-program requirements, again, because of the broadening reliance on allies and partners in the future. Six, we need to start avoiding duplication and political obstacles to industrial cooperation. Again, the NATO example, I think, is relevant here, where we have one single transatlantic alliance, but multiple transatlantic industries, or I should say non-transatlantic industries, that are prevented from effective cooperation in some cases by virtue of the fact that there are onerous political obstacles to that industrial cooperation. I think it's worth saying here, from our perspective in the United States, the sale of a piece of equipment is not the end game. We see a conversation that starts with requirements, that moves to interoperability, to absorption, to training and equipping, and then to political will and a long-term durable relationship. That is the end game. And the reason that my agency has existed now for 50 years is because we want to build a durable relationship at the end of the day. Seventh, industrial base viability. And here COVID has laid bare what we perhaps thought previously were higher levels of resilience in our industrial base. The world will remain a highly competitive place. I think government and industry need to spend more time talking to each other about how to build in new levels of resilience when this situation won't be going away anytime soon. I'll wrap with two very quick comments. I mentioned our new national defense strategy with its enhanced emphasis on allies and partners. That line of effort in the NDS will become real with reliable, ready, and operational capabilities and capacity across all regions, and in particular in this region. While not all regions will experience the same pressures, the relationships that hold them together will be the factor that makes a difference at the end of the day. I think that we will see coming out of the NDS increasing emphasis on a difference between frontline states that are dealing with key pressures from those that wish to change the rules-based international order, and then the importance and value of investing in regional security anchors in other regions where stability and crisis management might be the most important requirements going forward. So I would say that we need to be more discreet in the way that we think about our relationships with both sets of partners and allies. Finally, on my agency, the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, I just wanted to note that we are an all-of-NDS agency. Many folks think of us as the people who sell weapons, and we only service that part of the national defense strategy. But our national defense strategy will have quite a lot to say on international humanitarian law, on values, on human rights, and my agency will be an agency that services those interests as well. We have one of our components at my agency is the Defense Institute for International Legal Studies, with a large group of attorneys, all trained in IHL, that look to advise and support the capability development process with our allies and partners to make sure that we're thinking about, for example, advanced targeting practices and civilian casualty mitigation. And we need to be thinking just as effectively about that part of our security cooperation relationships as we are about the weapons sales side. We'll also be spending a lot of time working with our sister agencies in the US government on technology security. I just came from Abu Dhabi, where our Emirati partners hosted a fantastic conference on technological security. The word is getting out that this is a critical piece of making sure that we maintain the edge into the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Jed, thank you very much for that group of 7 points. Of all of them, I might just underscore the second, which is maybe of particular interest to many here, that the development of new technologies is outpacing the capacity of governments to procure and absorb them, both into inventories and into operations. We're now going to open it, as we did after the first plenary, to the floor. I've got 6 or 7 people on my list, and I'll come back to the panel to roughly in reverse order in which they spoke, to take the questions principally addressed to them. First was Simone Soare from Romania.
Thank you so much. My question is first to Governor Alohali. And I was wondering if you could give us a little bit more of detail about Saudi vision as to how you are seeking to adapt the way that your procurement and acquisition systems are going to deal with emerging and disruptive technologies as you are seeking to integrate them into defense capabilities. And then if I may, also a question for Lord Grimston and Deputy Director Royal. I'm happy that you mentioned values and norms, because that was sort of one of the questions that I was going to raise here as to whether within our partnerships with countries in the Middle East, we are thinking of highlighting best practices with respect to the use of new emerging technologies. If you could comment a little bit on that, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Turki bin Bandar bin Abdulaziz Al Saud from Saudi Arabia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is directed to His Excellency Lord Grimston and also to Mr. Royal. And I hope we don't hear a diplomatic answer. My question is, don't you think releasability of military technology and capabilities will affect building national capabilities and two-way investments? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, Wayne Keeble.
Thank you very much. And I have two questions, if I may, please. One to the Deputy Director relating to technology transfer. One of the issues that we see sometimes holding us back is the concern over transfer of IP and the subsequent elements of discrete technology transfer, where we would like to be able to do more business and partner, but sometimes we're held back. So I'd like his view on that, please, if he may. And perhaps the world events have loosened the strings there a little. And for Lord Grimston, I wonder if you would comment on the collaboration between large organizations, perhaps when it comes to working in region, and whether your organization could help broker those collaborations where perhaps we've been stovepiped before and we might be more effective if we were collective in our endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. And also from the UK, Caroline Emmett.
My question is to the esteemed Minister from the Republic of Korea. Your nation's climate strategy pledges a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2039. What opportunities is this providing for your defence acquisition programme and for your future plans in terms of emerging technology and capabilities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And since she worked so hard this morning, I think Fenella Magati can now pose challenge to the panel. Fenella.
Thank you, John. So my first question is for Lord Grimstone. In terms of the industrial cooperation agreements and partnerships in the region, are there any, will this be broad spectrum or will it be on targeted capabilities? Are there any that the UK perhaps would avoid if other market entrants have a more of a prior market share? Equally, are there opportunities that the UK is going to pursue specifically? And a second question, if I may, for Deputy Director Royal. It's quite a technical question in terms of how would the financing model becoming more competitive, how would that work? What support do we think there is for that back in the US? And are there any risks to extending that kind of policy towards certain countries, especially as economies are facing difficulties and inflation's rising, so you have to build that into contracts? Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Doug Barry.
Thanks, John. It's a theme that's been touched on in a few of the questions and indeed in a few of the presentations, so it's really a general question for the panel. But it's around this tension between what the purchaser may want or indeed desires to get in terms of technology access to build up their own defence industrial base, and the challenge for the seller or the provider of, at the same time as servicing that requirement, protecting key national technologies, be it intellectual property rights or sensitive classified materials. Thank you.
Thank you. Hassan Al-Hassan.
Thank you, John. My question is addressed to His Excellency Governor Al-Ohali. Your Excellency, you mentioned the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's ambitious goals in the area of defense indigenization and local industrial development. As we've heard in the previous session from Fenella and Emil, not all of Saudi Arabia's defense partners are equally prepared to transfer technology to the kingdom. Should we expect Saudi Arabia to give greater priority to defense partners who are more willing to transfer technology and contribute to the kingdom's defense indigenization agenda? Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll take three more before reverting to the panel for their responses and remarks. Bastian Giegerich.
John, thank you very much. Two quick questions, if I may. The first one to His Excellency, Governor O'Hally. So you spoke about the importance of raising R&D spending, but also defining priorities in order to deliver on your localization targets. So that is from your side. What are the one or two most important things that your industry partners should do to support that agenda that you've outlined? And my second question is to Jed Royal. You mentioned with regards to a Chinese presence in the market, you're less concerned about the capability and more concerned about competitiveness and when it comes to financing models and so on. But it seems to me that the presence of certain Chinese systems is already complicating the export of American and other systems, because it suggests something about the nature of the relationship, of course. And I'd like to invite you to comment on that a little bit more. Thank you.
James Hackett.
Thanks, John. Question to Minister Kang. Building on your the reference to DARPA's new technology priorities, I wonder if you could say a little bit about how DARPA has looked to the degree to which it's looking to build developments with the private sector and learn from and take advantage of technology developments in the private sector. And to Jed Royal, you mentioned Silicon Valley. As we know, the relationship between the Defense Department and Silicon Valley hasn't always been smooth of late. How, in your view, do you think the US government is looking to, and how much progress has it made in alleviating concerns in the private sector, high-tech community about working with DoD? Thank you.
And finally, Tom Beckett.
Minister Kang, you explained very nicely how Korea had developed from no defense base through until a sophisticated defense industry, including significant exports, most recently, I think, artillery to Australia. You said that you were keen to engage in co-development and local production, yet you would be cognizant of export controls. So my question is sort of the flip side of Hassan al-Hassan's, is what can you offer to countries that want greater support for R&D and IP cooperation and so on, that the more established and traditional weapons suppliers for the region, represented by Lord Grimston and Jed Royal, can't do?
Thank you very much. So there's quite an agenda there. Not everybody has to answer every question, but try your best to answer at least those questions directed towards you. Maybe I would ask first, Jed Royal, you had 3 or 4 focused on you.
Sure, certainly. Thank you very much for those questions. Deeply insightful just in listening to them. On values and norms, and particularly with respect to emerging disruptive technologies, there is a very active conversation going on right now on this particular topic. First is on, in its initial phase, data management policy. How do we have a data policy that respects the rights of human beings, of citizens, of nations, while we are also looking to use that data in order to be able to make each of these technologies effective? I think to the extent that we answer that question on how we handle data and what our policy is for data, then we will find that the application with a number of these technologies becomes a little bit more understandable and computable for us going forward. But having said that, we need to make sure that what we're not talking about in the US system, at least, is killer robots that are fully autonomous and do not have a human in the loop. And so to the extent that that is not well understood, I want to be clear on that point, that we are very much interested in making sure that human judgment is very much a part of our development of these technologies. And again, data is really the beginning part of that conversation. Let's see here. Wayne asked a question on technology transfer and intellectual property. Again, I referred to anticipatory policies in the United States and the need to be able to advance the way that we think about this as the research and development process is moving forward. In some cases, we don't know the nature of that technology at the outset of the research and development process. And so sometimes takes a bit of time for us to be able to make that determination But to the extent that we can anticipate with broad parameters for how we think about transferring technology to partners, we need to be able to do that. Perhaps it's a bit of good news. The Secretary of Defense announced just a couple of weeks ago the sale of 250 M1A2 SEP V3 Abrams tanks to Poland. And it's the first time that we have exported that variant of tank. And so I do think that there is a new conversation that's brewing in the United States about making sure that as we continue to rely on allies and partners in new and novel ways, that we are ensuring that they are capable in that regard. Let's see, Fenella asked about a technical question on competitive financing models. I'm not a technical guy, so I won't go too far down the technical road. But I will say that we've already taken some interesting steps in the United States, things such as risk-assessed payment schedules. This is understanding the creditworthiness of our allies and partners and adjusting payment schedules associated with that risk as we understand it. Looking at some interesting and creative approaches with termination liability. That's basically upfront insurance on weapon sales. And we have other categories of opportunity that we're providing our partners. I think in the future, one of the models we really do need to be looking at is loans. This is an active conversation within the interagency right now. We are not currently providing government-backed guaranteed loans for defense exports. And that's one thing that I do think we need to look towards in the future. But there's other models out there that I think we can explore. Bastian asked on financing and presence of China, does China complicate U.S. capabilities? The answer is yes, it does. I don't want to diminish the fact that China is playing a certain game with its defense exports and with its facilities that does in fact complicate the way that the United States thinks about partnerships with our allies and our partners. Having said that, I won't get into many details here, but I'll just say that it's worth our nations continuing to talk honestly and openly about the impacts associated with that so that we can find ways around them should they present real problems for us. I think I've probably answered more than I should have. I'll stop there. Thanks, John.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Lord Grimston.
Well, yes, thank you very much. I intend to answer less than I should have, having been answered so many questions, sort of following Jed. But let me make some general comments. Look, first of all, why are we allies and partners? It's because we do share values and norms. And because we share values and norms, it allows us to discuss them. It allows us to get into sensitive areas, which of course includes how we should monitor, emerging technologies and when they're used in the region. Doesn't mean that we should not use these technologies, but it means that we should be able to discuss them and to make sure that their use does line up with our norms. On collaboration, I'm very much in favour, except for certain very specialised national security matters, that if you collaborate, you have to collaborate across a broad spectrum. If you start picking and choosing what you're collaborating on, it isn't collaboration, and it's not a true partnership. So I am brave and I am sort of forward-leaning on this. This part about how do we work together with large organisations, small businesses. I run the Office for Investment for our Prime Minister in 10 Downing Street. And the whole purpose of that office, and we've developed some very far-reaching investment partnerships with countries in the Gulf, is to help partners talk to each other. It's to help big companies understand what's going on here and vice versa. And frankly, to open up people in this region to our policymakers at an early stage so that our policymaking can be influenced. There's no point sitting in an ivory cage, developing technologies, developing capabilities, and then hoping that your partners are going to want to use them. I'm a great believer in collaboration in these matters from an early stage.
Thank you very much. Actually, might press, just before I move to Minister Kang, press either of you to answer the sort of question about government collaboration with the high-tech world. Last November, Richard Moore, the head of the Secret Intelligence Service, gave his first public speech at the IISS, where he said his organization was now beginning to work with all sorts of people in the private sector, including rather small startups, on how to incorporate new technologies. Do you, Lord Grimston, feel that that's a happy and congenial relationship in the UK with technology startups, or do you worry about the sorts of big problems that the United States has had with their high technology giants?
Look, I'm not worried at all. And one of the things the UK has is a whole variety of startups. I can always tell who they are because they're about a quarter of my age and don't wear ties. But the ideas that come out of that absolutely has to form part of our philosophy and our work going forward. And this one has to, we have to use their language, we have to deal with them. That is not just the future, it is the present as well.
Minister Kang.
To convey my answer clearly, I will speak in Korean. Please use translation here.
For me, I had 3 questions. First is about climate change. 40% of the reduction of GHG and its impact on the defense acquisition and the impact on the future plan. And I would like to give answer to that. Korean government has been implementing the various efforts to prevent climate change. In particular, in defense area, Korea has technological advantage and that should be utilized in defense area. And to do so, we have been putting best effort. And in particular, the hydrogen-powered engine has been developed and that has been mounted in weapon systems, and this kind of development has started. And also, many great technology regarding battery has been seen in the private area. And that can be also the possible area that we can dwell into. Second, about the utilization of the private technology, such as Silicon Valley, and the utilization of technology that are being in the U.S. And you asked about this question. And in 2017, I went to the Silicon Valley. There has been GIS committee, and I've seen how these technologies are utilized on the defense area. So in various areas, Korea has been putting best effort to utilize this kind of private technology. And to utilize this kind of technology, DIU is the Defense Innovation Group, and this is established to utilize this technology. Basically, we are focusing on utilizing the homegrown technology. However, we are expecting to utilize also the technology from other countries as well. Third, there are various experts about the weapon systems. And under the international control system, we have been expanding our cooperation. And regarding this cooperation, you asked me what kind of plan we have and what kind of plan we have for IP. Basically, when we cooperate our friendly countries, as aforementioned, I already mentioned in my presentation that we pursue win-win relations. This is our priority, which means that not only limit to the relations of buyer and seller, but we would like to utilize the advantage of the partner countries. In the relations with cooperation, if we can also conduct co-R&D, if we have the background IP in Korea, maybe there can be some limitations. However, we can share foreground IP. And regarding the various weapon systems, localization can be also proactively supported. We are ready for that. In the short term, we hope that
무기체계 운영과 관련된
Regarding the operation of weapon systems, we can support the sustainable maintenance capacity.
Minister Kang, thank you very much. Governor.
Thanks, John. I think I had 4 questions, and I probably lumped them in 2 because they have some, I would say, similarities. The first one was talking about how to adapt acquisition and procurement program versus emerging technologies, and particularly procurement. And I will probably address them in a couple angles. One is through very solid acquisition and procurement protocol by the forces and the end users. And the second one is through innovation, research, and technology. But before that, I think both these 2 anchors require a real important umbrella. And that umbrella is a trust and relationship. I think Saudi Arabia share a lot of values in terms of national security with lots of our friends and partners throughout the globe. Saudi Arabia has proven that it's a very trusted, player in the world. For example, in the energy, in terms of stability through the globe. So expanding that into acquisition versus emerging technologies, I think our forces and I would call them the end users, they go through that process of evaluation of requirements versus emerging technologies. Now, this is, to me, is the first step. What's the more important, more sustainable, is what we just talked about. Minister Kang and Lord Grimston talk about the emerging technologies. Without research and technology and innovation and a sustainable program, I think you will be left behind, no matter how much help you will have from other nations or other partners. And this is what we are mostly talking about, is in collaboration through the industrial participation program, through the friendly companies and countries that will help us to work through the acquisition program and the emerging technologies. The second question was talking about technology transfer partners, and I think it was their willingness to help in a transfer of technology and what are the key things for the industries. Well, I will just want to make a statement that, and I mentioned it in my initial keynote, that research and development is one of the key pillars for Saudi Arabia to develop its defense industry. And we are making a real big deal out of it and commitments in terms of investments. And as I mentioned, our strategy and goals is to invest or spend 3 to 4 folds of what we have spending in the last couple of years. I think, again, the relationship here, in my opinion, is very important. We have established a very solid intellectual property program that will ensure the transfer of technology is well protected in the kingdom. Again, the industrial participation program, it involves incentives and it involves also leeway for the OEMs who are transfer technologies to benefit from the acquisitions program. The main 2 things I would say in terms of from the industry part is, one of them is in human capital, the second of them is the involvement in the supply chain in Saudi Arabia. I think these eventually will help support the transfer of technology. That's
Governor, thank you very much. In a moment, I'll ask you to, in your own words, conclude this day. For my part, let me first thank our 4 speakers here for their marvelous presentations and their stimulation of so much thought in the hall. For the IISS, it's been truly a signal honor to have been able to present our data and research here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The IISS is international in composition, international in perspective, and international in reach. And I have to say what a pleasure it's been for all of the IISS staff to be working here in Saudi Arabia and in partnership with the GAMI. We hope to return again. Let me thank all the 4 speakers now for their marvelous presentations and invite Governor of GAMI to give us the last word and conclude our proceedings for the day.
Thanks. Is it clear? Yeah. Thanks, Joe. First of all, I would like to thank all of you of being part of today's exciting discussions and exchange of information. I think we have been talking about a very important and critical global security issues. And we are delighted also that to have IISS to establish this first Riyadh Defense Forum on the eve of the World Defense Show, which runs tomorrow, and it's going to be from Sunday to Wednesday. It's going to have a lot of exciting events. We're going to have 600 participants, exhibitors, both government and companies from around the globe. We're going to have this coming from about 40 countries with about 60 delegations also. It's the first time, but we are very confident and sure that it's going to be a unique exhibition. Throughout the show, we're going to have two major, I would say, events that I would encourage you to participate or at least attend them. First one on Monday, we'll have two ministerial panels that will be talking on two major issues which we have discussed today. One is in innovation and technology in defense, and the other one in human capital in defense. That's going to take on Monday from 11 to 1. The second one, which are very proud also, and it will be hosted by Her Royal Highness Princess Rima bin Bandar bin Sultan, our ambassador to the US. She will be hosting the Women in Defense Day on Tuesday. There will be lots of respected CEOs, women CEOs in the defense industry. There will be a lot of discussion that I look forward for that. Again, we thank you very much for attending today, and I hope you will have a very lovely and exciting WDS show the next 4 days. Thank you.
Marvelous. Thank you very much, sir.